1 second. How about now? Do we have sound?
It's the mic and aux is picking something up.
It is, and unfortunately they can't hear anything despite that happening. So if I'm speaking, can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, you can hear me now.
Yay!
All right, well, I may need to get a newer computer relatively soon because one of the USB drives just, I guess, is intermittent. So it was plugged in and registering, and all I did was switch it to another USB port, and now it works. So who knows? I'm using a web camera from 2012. The original. This is the original camera that I recorded my tutorials on back in the day. Yeah, so apologies for the delayed intro, so I will do that again. Hi everyone, I'm Jen from Actually Diet Art by Science, and today's live stream is going to be about weaving with my big loom, not the pin loom like the thumbnail image was sort of displaying, mainly because I had to use some thumbnail, so I used that one from my last one and never got around to actually putting the proper one on there. So yeah, the ports are a little bit weird, and this computer is from 2014 and it's secondhand, so the onboard microphone and camera just don't work, and I sometimes struggle with it recognizing some of my devices when I plug them in. So it's probably because it's old. But sometimes you just gotta make do. So I will remember to plug in my webcam to the other side so that that doesn't happen again. Anyway, as I was saying, apologies for my Christmas tree being up still. I know it's February. But that's sometimes the stuff that happens when you have COVID for basically a month. So after my last live stream, where I did the pin loom, I basically had COVID rebound symptoms for an entire 7 or 8 days, and then it took a little bit of sort of sleeping to recover. and I still don't feel 100%. I'm still really, really tired. But I am feeling more myself. But today was sort of, a little bit. I kind of debate going back and forth whether to do these when I'm not feeling 100% because I have a tendency to overcommit, and I usually end up suffering. So because the full-time job that I've got, my day job, I work in a busy cafe, and it's even busier now that it's half term. So a lot of kids are out of school for the next couple of weeks, so I'll be working a lot. And well, I worked yesterday, and it was insanely busy the entire day, and I'm surprised that we got out when we did. So yeah, Crystal said I have until April, so that's good. It will come down at some point. Stayed up for a bit longer than I think it does normally, but there was one time I moved during spring break, and the tree got put into a box because of the move. So it's actually not as late as I've accidentally left it up for. So yeah, I did not totally test to make sure that this would fit, but if anything I can actually move this a little bit. And I'm very excited to be using my my loom stand for this because I don't think I could have tolerated sitting on the floor weaving this entire blanket. So yeah, because the content has been a little bit hit or miss lately, apologies if there's any other hiccups in my filming and release schedule for the channel. But I did get some things added to my Etsy and actuallydyed.com, so if you're interested in some more yarns, which actually I could probably show you. Apologies, I should have just grabbed these and brought them over. So this one, I'm calling sage butter because it's like a light buttery cream that's almost got like a greenish hue to it. And then this one, which, so this one I think I did, yeah, this is a sport weight yarn. And then this one is an Aran weight, but it's a 2-ply, and I'm calling it parchment. So I think you can probably see that on the stream. Yep. So those are, well, this is coming to the shop soon. This is already in the shop. But if you are interested in some yarns, they're there. I've also taken photos of some fiber that I didn't realize I hadn't taken photos of. So that's going to be coming into the stores soon. And then just one more shameless plug. I am on Patreon. So if you want to support me and the content that I make, please consider checking that out. I think I'll probably have another post going up there tomorrow. So if you want to see what I have going on behind the scenes, please consider stopping by and checking out the different tiers. So this blanket that I'm working on was sort of conceived of during the Tour de Fleece last year, which was in basically from I think July 1st to the 24th. And that was kind of a bit of a challenge for me, and I've talked about this in previous videos and live streams. But essentially what I wanted to do was spin a bunch of yarn and record myself and then edit and upload a video every day. And that worked at the beginning, but my mom also came to visit me for my PhD graduation, which was July 21st, and that kind of caused my time scale to be shifted quite a lot. So the project that I had on the loom at the time, because I thought, hey, why not weave something while also spinning and editing and uploading videos at all that Tour de Fleece time. So I basically needed to finish that Tour de Fleece weaving project in order to put my Tour de Fleece like the second Tour de Fleece weaving project on the loom. So that's what I've got here. And when I was doing my yardage calculations, which I get that there are calculators for weaving online, but I don't like how it hides or potentially hides certain information from me. Because for me, I want to know how things work, and if I don't understand how the calculation works, then it sounds like the number that I have that's telling me how much yardage I need sounds unreasonable. Now, that's based on personal experience, where I've taken, random bits of handspun, thrown it on the loom, and woven something, right, like a little scarf. And I'm always surprised that I have so much yarn left over, because I always feel like I need a ton more, and then when I started weaving, it's like, oh, I didn't need all that. So because I was going to do a much bigger project, this was a 5-yard warp. I wanted to make sure that I didn't get into a position where one panel was done and beautiful and perfect, but then I had like no extra yarn for the next panel. And these yarns, I used, the red here is Gulf Coast Native, and sort of like this pinky orangish color is Cormo. That was all I had. So I dyed it and spun it, and that's it. I could have added more handspun to it just in case, but it was asking me to have something over, it was like well over 2,000 yards for these panels, and I know that I'm going for a large blanket, but I wasn't quite convinced I needed over 2,000 yards for this, especially when you take the basic principle with your rigid heddle dent, which this is 10. This is a 10 dent rigid heddle, and it's 32 inches. So that should be 256 yards or warp ends, I think. So that doesn't even work out right. It was 200 something. Don't hold me to that. But I basically needed to have 4 repeats of the yarns so that they weren't all clumped together in one spot. And when I did the calculation of how many yards total I would need, and then how many yards I had for each of my yarns, it was actually really, really complicated, and I'll explain this later in the video about this project. I realized that my handspun wasn't quite enough. So I have this yellow, which you can kind of see in this stream, which I'm hoping is still going okay. I haven't heard any comments lately. I guess it's all right. Yeah, so I decided to add in this hand-dyed merino, it's a superwash, to bolster the amount of yardage I had to work with. So initially I wanted to go with just the red and the pink, but it wasn't going to be quite enough, so it's slightly more of a summery look, or maybe a spring look, 'cause it's very bright because of the yellow that I'm using. Okay, people are still listening, that's good. So, I had only about 1,200 yards of all of my handspun, and so these skeins are 100 grams each. The sport weight is 437 yards, and I also have some DK weight, and that is double knit. That was 236 yards per 100 grams, and I had 2 of each, plus all the handspun. And I've also got some random bits of other handspun from years ago that I didn't know what to do with. So this is one of the very first yarns that I spun on my spinning wheel at the time, which was pre-Kromski. This was my Babe wheel, and I'm guessing it's merino based on how it feels. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's merino, and It's really unevenly spun and unevenly dyed, which was something I didn't really mind too much. I just wanted it dyed so I could use it for something. And it sat in my stash for, I guess, 11 years. And so I thought, well, this is actually the perfect product to use it for, because the color family, it's kind of like a muted coppery pink. Yeah, that's what I would describe this color as. So it's a lot thicker than the sport weight yarn, right? And so one of the things I thought, well, I want a lot of visual texture, and since I'm just working with wool, there's a tiny bit of silk in some of the colors that I've got here, but I wanted to add in some texture, and so I'm also weaving with these thicker yarns. And as I promised during a previous live stream when I talked about spinning a bat to sort of see if you actually really hate how it turned out, or if maybe while you're spinning it you actually appreciate it more, or you think of a different project to use it for. So, you know, if you were like me when you first started carding wool, you know, maybe you've overdone it and you've lost a lot of color and a lot of texture. Just spin it to see if you like it. You know, that's one option that you have available to you. And to follow up on that idea, I also showed how to spin a bat when you have sort of retained some of the colors and the textures. Also to highlight how you can harmonize a really blended bat of the same colors versus a less blended bat, because I was going to use this in the same project. So I've got this purple yarn that I did on a previous live stream, and I didn't have a lot of yardage of it because I didn't have much wool to begin with. I think it was only about 50 grams, and I did a 3-ply. So I spun that. Was it 3-ply? I think it's a 3-ply. To check how many plies, you just untwist and count. Yes, this is a 3-ply. So I did a 3-ply yarn with that bat. And so I didn't have a lot of it, so it's only like 2 warp threads spaced out. So there's a total of 8 warp threads throughout this pattern repeat. And because I'm going to do 2 full panels, it will be a total of 8 repeats throughout the project. But because this yarn I wanted to incorporate, this is the one where I didn't blend it quite as much. Same colors, but you get a lot more of the variation. So there's some bright purple bits, some bright red bits, some yellow bits, and I think this is a 2-ply. Pretty sure this was a 2-ply. So it's going to have a softer texture than the other first bat that I spun as a 3-ply. So I'm adding in this every so often to kind of harmonize with this purple yarn, because in terms of a palette, it does stick out slightly because it's the only thing that's definitely more on like the purple range, but because I've used red in the blend, it's going to go well with the pattern. So I've explained a little bit about sort of my thought process in setting up the colors as I've done, and the yardage, and then the weaving. So I wanted to go with a full 60 inches, and so because I know that there are different fibers and yarns going into this, this is actually going to change a little bit the overall length. So what I've done here is I'm overcompensating. This is just a standard cotton. Hi Jody, welcome to the stream. Better late than never. So yeah, this is cotton twine that you would use in the kitchen for like trussing up a chicken or a turkey. And all I've done is I've measured out 70 inches and cut it. Now I've already woven one panel, and what I would do is after maybe a couple of inches of weaving, I would take a bit of this and pin it into the fabric. And so as I would rotate the front beam down to advance the warp, this would also be attached with the fabric. So it's not like the most perfect system, and I don't know how other weavers do this, but I expect they kind of do something similar. So to make sure that they are as exact as possible, so that when I go to finish it, I don't have to unweave a lot in order to get the panels lined up. I unpinned this from the first panel, and now I'm using this as my weaving guide for the second panel. So hopefully that makes sense, and I'm trying to keep it in the middle because on the edges I don't actually have any kind of warp sticks on my loom. I just have paper, and I think I talked about this previously in my live stream for the pin loom. I don't have any budget right now to do that, so I'm just going to use what I had, which is paper. But that means that the tension that I have on this loom is not as tight as I would like, and so I have to be really careful about how I beat so that it doesn't get crooked, which is something that can happen if your warps are uneven. And also when you advance the warp, there's a tendency for your selvages to be malaligned because there isn't as much consistent tension on them. So even though it's going a lot faster because of the loom stand and the fact that I don't have to be really tedious with how I'm, moving the heddles and the weft and beating everything down like I had to do for my last weaving project, so go see daily vlog number 60. I still have to pay attention to what is happening on the sides here. So to be as accurate as possible, I'm putting my length guide down the middle, which is also on my rigid heddle. I've got it marked in the middle, so this is pretty much in the middle. Okay, so that's how I'm keeping track of the length. And I've got really no rhyme or reason with how I'm doing the weaving itself. So I like pattern, but sometimes I just can't be bothered with keeping track of it because if I miss something, it will make me very upset. So in order to have a slightly more loose perspective of weaving, I just wind a bunch of random lengths onto my my weaving stick here, and then I just weave until I run out. So I don't have a bunch of shuttles. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say, shuttles. I don't have a bunch of weaving shuttles. I think I have 2 that are this length, and then I've got 1 that's this length, which I think came from my 16-inch Kromski loom. So yeah, I'm just kind of going with it. Who else showed up? Hi Mindy, thank you for joining. So I'm just doing a basic tabby weave, and I'm not going to shift this slightly. Hopefully you can see. So I'm just doing a basic tabby weave because I really want something that is easy to produce. Because I've just wanted to get this done as a project, for me, tabby weave or plain weave is the fastest thing because it's just one petal up and down. I do want to start doing more complicated weaves, but that involves getting an extra, I don't even know what these things are called. It's the part of the loom that holds the rigid heddle. Either the name is escaping me or I just don't know what it is. But it's basically what I'm using now to kind of keep the rigid heddle in the down position, or the up position, or the neutral position. So right now it's in down position, that's why you can't really see it. And I'm kind of doing about, I'd say, a 35-degree angle on the weft. So if this is the fell of the fabric here, it's about 35 degrees up from there. And that's one way I've been trying to keep this whole project really consistent, is making sure that that angle is as consistent as possible. And I'm hoping that when I go to stitch these panels together, it will be pretty obvious that I've tried to keep the edges nice and straight. The other thing that I've noticed with this loom stand is I actually have something to beat against. So I can hold my feet up on there's like a bottom bit of the loom stand. I can put my feet there and then beat down with the rigid huddle, and I get a nice like firm beat that doesn't involve me having to beat it down a couple of times, which is what I had to do before that I got the loom stand. And I didn't even think that I would be doing it that way when I first got it, but it's very natural. So the time for each beat is actually much less than what I was doing before, which is nice. So 30 degrees down and then straight back up. Now I did notice, and this is probably because there's more about these weaving calculators I don't have information about, because like I said, I'm not really a weaver, I just kind of dabble, and so I've just done things as intuitively as possible and building, you know, new skills in as I go. But I am kind of running a bit low on some of my yarns. And I don't know if that's just my brain panicking, thinking, oh no, I don't have enough of this because the ball of yarn looks smaller, but that's what happens when you use the yarn. Of course it's going to get smaller. So I had previously been keeping track of all of the yarns that I was using, and I had them all labeled A, B, C, D, etc., and the total yardage. But at some point, they got moved around a bunch. At some point, some of them lost their little labels, so I don't know which is which. Had I known which ball of yarns I was working with, then I could do a quick calculation to see approximately how much yarn I must have used in the warp versus, the warp and the weft I've made so far in the first panel, and how much I have remaining. So if I weighed all of the balls of yarn after I did the warp, then that would be the total amount of weft I had to work with. Then, once I was done with the first panel, I could see how much yarn I had left for the second panel to see if I would have had enough. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm hoping I will have enough, but I definitely have enough of this yellow. So I think probably what's going to happen at the end of this project is I will have one panel that is slightly more red and another panel which is slightly more yellow. That's okay. I've used a wooden ruler with notches cut out. Do you mean as a heddle, Jody? Oh, as a shuttle. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that would be a good use of old rulers, because those wooden ones, I like using sustainable materials, right? If you have a nice wooden one. The problem is, unless you have a ruler that's got that metal strip embedded in the wood, wooden rulers, if they get a little bit dented, good luck trying to make a nice perfect straight line. Because they can get warped, and also like if they get dented, like the wood gets dented, because I think they're usually made out of pine, then if you run a line down with a pencil, you'll get like a little divot. I have a metal one, and I have no idea for the life of me where it is. It's in a box somewhere, but I don't have that many boxes left to unpack. Yeah. Cheryl thinks maybe these are called cradles for holding the rigid heddle. Maybe. That seems reasonable. But I would need to get another set. So this loom, I think, does 3, because there's another set of holes there and there. So I actually would not have a lot of working room if I had 3. But I have seen people do 2-1 twill with just a single heddle. The problem is you need to have string heddle for the other shaft, or some people will use a pickup stick on the back side of the weaving. So you have your rigid heddle here going up and down. But the problem is I don't know what I'm doing, and I haven't given myself time to learn, so it's just really, really confusing to me. And until I can sort of see and feel it, it might be worth just getting another rigid heddle and the little holder for the loom. Practice it that way, and then kind of go with a string heddle version. It's weird, like some really complicated things my brain just instantly understands, and sometimes you know, something like this that seems really obvious to others is just like, I don't understand at all. Different brains, different patterns. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions about the project so far, or you know, anything that I need to clarify about the project? Just go ahead and pop that in the chat. Modern color design as opposed to traditional. And Crystal says traditional color design is how striped socks happen. You think you have enough and you weren't right. Yeah, I can see that. And speaking of socks, I will be doing a New Year's resolution check-in. Because as it turns out, Royal Mail had a cyber attack back in sort of the latter half of January, and I can't ship anything internationally. So I take packages over there every once in a while to see if I can ship them, but I still can't. And it's really frustrating. But my mom's Christmas present can't be shipped yet, so I will be making a video on my my first real like knit focused construction project of the year, which was making toe-up socks. So I'll be talking about that and what I've learned so far with that construction method, and considering how to design various patterns, because there's a lot of cuff down construction on socks and less with toe up. I mean, I see it much more commonly that way. I don't know if that's actually the case, but that's just what I see. And I have some patterns that I really, really love the design of, like the leg portion of the sock, but I need to think about how to do that pattern from the reverse, so not with the fabric moving down towards the toe, but the opposite direction. Or maybe just doing the same pattern but in reverse might look different. Who knows? So yeah, I'll be talking about that in the next daily vlog probably. I also managed to finish my hemp weaving so that my distaff is cleared off for the next live stream project. I'm going to be attempting to spin wool from my distaff, which I have conveniently taken out of reach, so I can't show you how it looks without the stuff on it. So, yeah. Nearing the end here of this, and one of the things that I've been doing is I'm not necessarily keeping track of how many weft picks I'm doing of each color. So the color blocks are all randomly sized. Also, it kind of works out nicely because I'm using different gauges of yarn. So it would be more complicated, I guess, if I tried to be really, really consistent with everything, because if I'm using a thicker yarn, yeah, I'll be using less yarn overall because I'm not going through as many weft picks with a thicker yarn as I would a thinner yarn. But because they're hand spun and I wasn't really as concerned with gauge for some of them, so they're all, you know, some of them have some thicker places and thinner places, it would just create more chaos that I wasn't willing to deal with. So I'm just opting for, I'm putting this much on and weaving until it's gone. But in general, I'm not using the really thick yarns for wide panels. So this one here is probably about 3.5 inches. But if I switch to a thicker yarn, which I will do here in a second, I'm not going to do 3.5 inches of that really thick yarn. The problem with switching between huge yarn gauge disparities is your selvages are going to kind of take on a curved effect, and that's because when the yarn gets looped back through, this folds up and it's actually very narrow in size. But if you do that with a thicker yarn, like this one, right, that turn back is going to be much, much bigger. So hopefully you understand what I'm talking about with that. Let's see if I can bring this closer. So if the weft is going through, or sorry, if the warp is going through here, right, then this is more like what the edge is going to look like, right? So if the warp is here, right, then this little turnaround isn't going to go out from the edge of the fabric quite as much as this one will, right? So this one will go out further. And so what will happen is you'll get sort of like the edges will sort of like form outward slightly and then come back in. So I like it. I like the effect, right? But I don't want to have such a big block of it because it might distort the edges of the fabric too much. So I'm kind of using it as an accessory, I guess, right? So like you have your basic clothes, a sweater, jeans, shoes, right? That's kind of like an outfit. But you might add in things like a scarf or a necklace or some earrings or rings. You might get like a little sweater to wrap around your waist, right? So yeah. That's kind of my thought with using those thicker yarns is they're contributing to the overall aesthetic of my project, but they're not good structurally for it. I think it'll just cause too many problems, and I just don't want that. Okay, so I've gotten to the end. I've got a little bit of a tail here. And so because I wasn't sure how much I was wrapping on this one, because this one's actually slightly smaller, the 32-inch comes with a 32-inch shuttle. So more or less, one wrap on one side is one weft, and then one wrap on the other side is another weft. So one full wrap around should be about 2 wefts. It's not exactly perfect because it is going to go up and over the warps. So that total amount of yardage is going to shrink slightly. But more or less, that's kind of my idea. So this one being smaller, right? This one being smaller, I don't actually know how much I'm going to get out of this. So because I finished my warp on this side, I'm going to feed it left to right. And again, this is that thicker yarn that I spun over a decade ago. People were beginners before they become better at doing stuff. So even though I had been pretty competent with spinning with a spindle by the time I got my first wheel, I realized very quickly that it just behaves differently than a spindle. I've always felt like I was struggling to, keep pace with my spinning when I first got my wheel. The other thing was I held my hands differently, and it was really difficult to switch from spinning like this to spinning like this. And there weren't really many tutorials on the internet, so that was, I started in 2010, and there weren't that many tutorials then because I had to actually go to a weaver, a local spinner. She also wove, but I needed to have lessons for my first master's degree. So I learned from her how to spin with a spindle, but when it came to the wheel, I thought, oh, I know what I'm doing. It's not that hard to figure out. And in truth, it really wasn't that hard to figure out, but it felt a little bit like learning all over again what I was doing. And it's part of the reason why I spin a little bit strangely. So if you ever watch me spin, it's kind of a backwards supported draw, but it's not really fully supported, and it's not really a worsted style because I let the twist go into the fiber supply. But yeah, that's what happens in the days before YouTube tutorials. I probably could have gone back and gotten more lessons from her, but I also didn't have a lot of money, so that's that. Now, it's going to be really difficult to show you. You have to try it and fail to learn. I don't want to move the camera too much, but I wanted to show you kind of what I was talking about with the edges. So let me see if I can just dip this down. Oh, no, it's not going to show you. But you can kind of see here where it's a lot thicker. Kind of bubbles up on the surface versus what's here, right? You might be able to see that. It's this red line right here. Yeah. So hopefully you saw that. If not, I have plenty of time to do a video of the final project for the project video for this, rather than the live stream, because it's really difficult to move my camera around a bunch. I basically have to set it up and leave it. So I don't know how many picks I will do with this. I basically just go until it seems like I've done enough. But again, I'm still keeping it at that 35-degree angle or so that the selvages kind of stay as even as possible, so there's no drawing in of the warp. And then when I've done a couple of rows, the two ends here. I just kind of do an overhand knot, so just once around, and that usually holds it in place. And then when I'm done, I will come back and deal with this during the finishing stage. But because I'm doing 2 panels, I don't know whether those yarns actually might be really useful for joining them together. I don't know. We'll see. I might need them, so I don't want to get rid of them anytime soon. And I've also woven enough where I'm going to have to pin this in place, my guide in place, so that I can advance the warp again. I think I might do one more through and see how that looks. If you are like me, you have a tendency to always finish the weft on the same side. I'm trying to not do that quite so much. What you end up with is, instead of doing like 4 or 6 total rows, I might do 5. So I picked up on the left-hand side, but I might finish on the right-hand side. So that will give you an odd number rather than an even number. And again, I'm trying to be more organic and open so that the things that I make don't look very cookie cutter. And it helps with my personal freedom of expression. I have a tendency to control things a lot. And even though I really enjoy controlling my spinning and my weaving and knitting and everything, I have very, very good spinning and knitting gauge. Sometimes it's just as important to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, because you actually end up making things that you end up appreciating more because of the kind of challenge you presented yourself. So for me, my first real challenge doing something that just I did not feel comfortable doing was random stripes. I loved whenever people could just knit random stripes into stuff, but whenever I sat down to do something similar, I couldn't. It always ended up being really, really regular. And so in 2013, I traveled around to Germany and Austria for a couple weeks, and on that trip I had a bag full of various handspun, and I just wanted to do a basic triangular shawl, and I wanted it to be a bit lacy, so I chose bigger needles than what were required and just kind of went with it. I'm glad that I did, because I still love it all these years later, and it's one of the prettiest things that I've made. Yeah, so I'm just checking in with the chat again. I spun thread as a beginner. I am still working on spinning heavier yarn 20-some years later. I feel you, Mindy. I started off, obviously, with a thicker yarn, but partially out of an obsession for really consistent yarns, I would go thinner and thinner and thinner. And that was also the time when I was thinking I might actually sit down and knit one of those giant, like, intricate lace projects. I actually don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but there was something on Ravelry from like 2006, I want to say, maybe 2007, where there was a knitter who posted a project that she did. It was like a giant circular shawl, and it was lace, and it was like a dark color, maybe green, and I was so in love with it and impressed. And then I thought, wouldn't it be great to knit that someday? So I put it into my queue. And then when I started spinning, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be great to spin something for this project? And so that kind of led to this need to create something that was really, really consistent and also really fine. I've still not knitted anything like that, which is okay. But doing thicker, heavier yarn or gauge yarn is still a bit of a challenge for me. It might actually just be a really fun spinning challenge to do during one of the live streams. Is just let's sit down and make a thick yarn. That would be a good idea. Pinch into your drafting triangle more. Yeah. So when I do a front or a forward draw, I will definitely pinch, because that's the best way to make a consistent yarn that way. But whenever I'm spinning, like the picture you may have seen for my thumbnail for the New Year's resolution video, that's my handspun merino. And when you compare it against a commercially spun yarn, it looks very, very similar. Mine has a higher twist, so it's a little bit more obviously handspun to me, but I spin a little bit weird, but I spin the way that I spin. And I'm Popeye the Sailor. Hopefully someone gets the reference. Let's see here. Yeah, Cheryl Lacemaker has spun fine yarns for lace knitting. It would be good to see some more of your projects, Cheryl. Because I'm not a lace knitter at all. I kind of aspire to be one, but it's... Maybe I should just do something small, because I can do basic lace. I did a cashmere, it was 100% cashmere that I bought and dyed for myself for Christmas. And I spun it, and then when we were in America, basically the very start of the pandemic, I started this lace project, which is probably an insane thing to do, considering, you know, international travel and cashmere yarn. Traveling with such a delicate yarn that you can't just throw it into your bag, because it will come out like a giant matted mess. But maybe something a little smaller. I don't think I actually ever showed that project. I'll have to get that out of storage and show you guys, because I think I made it and then never showed it. Someday I'll spin thicker than what is my default. Yeah, my default is to do a sport weight yarn, either 2-ply or 3-ply, which is part of the reason why my New Year's resolution sweater was pretty much a sport weight yarn. It was 6 stitches per inch. It's hardest with long draw. My long draw is thicker and a bit lumpy. I kind of like it. Yeah, it's from Mindy and Crystal. Mine are very similar as well. One of my last live streams that I did long draw, and was pleasantly surprised at how well it went, because my first couple of experiences weren't that great, and it doesn't really encourage you to keep doing it when it doesn't turn out the way that you think. So yeah, I think probably having a nicer set of proper set of hand cards would help me, because the one that I have, it's very wobbly. Ooh, that's an interesting idea. Spinning art rolags. That'd be another fun live stream topic as well, because I'm fine to spin those, but I don't spin them long draw. I spin them kind of like a worsted yarn. Yeah, so please post in the chat if you want to see a live stream spinning sort of art rolags. So not like the ones for long draw per se, but just how I do that. Because I don't know if I've actually ever showed it on a video. I don't think anyway. So I'm just now adding on my DK weight yellow. So one of the things I'm trying to do is alternate colors as much as possible. But I will still have sort of like the pinky Cormo next to the reddish Gulf Coast native. But again, because I'm running a bit low on those colors, I'm trying to use more of the yellow. The other thing I'm doing, and I don't know if other weavers do this too, I learned this trick from somebody, and I can't remember where, but if you are threading your shuttle with your weft yarn, if you put your hand here and then wrap around it, it doesn't make the yarn too tight. It doesn't hold it as much under tension, if that makes sense. Especially if you end up leaving your project for a while, like I'm prone to doing. Let's see here, what else? Judy, and that's all that I am. Oh, I'm so glad. It's funny the way that when we speak, you can actually predict what someone's going to say in a conversation based on how certain phrases get grouped together, especially in conversation. It's sort of like a quick recall that we have, and when I started saying what I said, I was just like, oh my god, this sounds like Popeye. Oh my goodness. Back then I was designing lace weight pie shawls. Those are so much fun, and like toe up socks, I had to reverse a lot of the direction of lace patterns, which was a challenge. Mindy, that's actually really cool. If you know of any patterns, or if you've got patterns available for free or for purchase, doesn't matter, please put that into the comments below so that others know about it. Certainly I will enjoy going over and ogling them and maybe fantasizing a little bit about having the capacity to do that kind of knitting. Sorry, COVID has sort of like given me a lot of struggles. So not only did it carry on for like 4 weeks, but when I released the last daily vlog on Tuesday, my whole plan was to come home from work and do like a promotion on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And instead I came home, did a bunch of cleaning up and tidying up, and then I sat down for like a half hour to watch something and unwind, and then dinner, dishes. And then I was like, yeah, it's about that time. I feel like I need to take a shower and get ready for the evening. And then I got a notification of my own video saying, you're going to do your premiere in a half hour. And I was like, oh my god. And I'm just forgetting like everything basic. So I almost forgot my own premiere. And I also forgot to do all of the other things that I wanted to do to promote it. So I've put my scissors. Oh, I've lost my scissors already. So how much of this? I think this is actually the only DK weight that I have left of the yellow. So I'll probably end up using all of this yarn, and if it's not quite big enough, I think we might have to go on to plan B, which is shorter panels but still kind of wide. So it's going to be about 60 inches wide or thereabouts when I'm done, because it's 32 inches. But when I take it off the loom, it's going to kind of shrink in a little bit, so I'm predicting somewhere around 30 inches total in the width, times 2, so that'll be about 60, and about 75 inches long. Conservatively, it might be more like a 60-60, where it's a square rather than a rectangle that's only slightly longer than it is wide. But I wanted something that was big to kind of wrap up in. And I was kind of budgeting my yarn based on what is a UK double bed. So those duvets are 200 centimeters by 200 centimeters. They're square and they look fine. So that kind of principle. Cheryl says, I am doing the spin-off challenge, spin with spindle, and then make an item of lace in 3 months. Oh, that's pretty good. That will definitely keep you on track to completing projects. So yeah, just to recap, we did 5 rows of that thicker yarn. And when I use this one, it will make sure that the edge, the selvage, doesn't kind of go out too far for too long. It's, in my opinion, I think it'll be okay, even if it's a slightly wobbly edge. But even if not, it's mine. It's not like, you know, I have any marketing to do to sell it. It's going to keep me warm. And it will keep us from fighting over the same blanket. So we've got yes, yes, yes. I'd like to see you spin rollags. Rollags are always fun. Sounds like what pregnancy brain is like. Oh my god. Yeah, one of the things I'm hoping this isn't is long COVID, because I had the COVID symptoms for a lot longer than I did the first time I had it, and I'm all fully vaccinated and boosted and everything, but it was sort of just, it kept dragging on, and at one point I could barely even speak because my tongue got swollen from all the coughing I was doing. And one of the other issues I've been dealing with is like carryover symptoms. So even though I haven't been coughing at all, I still sometimes will get like the sensation. So like I'll wake up in the morning and my ears are kind of plugged and they hurt a little bit, and then it feels like my throat is getting sore, and my tongue feels like I've been coughing, so it was like sore and tender. But then after a couple of hours of being awake, I'm fine, like totally 100% fine. So yeah, I don't know. It's serious. Like I've not experienced what basically felt like the flu for so long. So yeah, I think in the next few live streams we're going to do a return to spinning, because I think a lot of you are pretty enthusiastic about watching me spin various things. So yeah, I think next week I'm off Saturday. So I'll have to do a Saturday live stream rather than a Sunday. Hopefully that's okay for you guys. If it isn't, then there's not much I can do about work on Sunday, unfortunately. But I think what I'll be doing is spinning with combed top. I haven't spun with combed top in a long time, and during the at World of Wool, they do a Black Friday sale, and so I bought a bunch of merino combed top because I just wanted to dye some random colors to put in the shop, because I was very busy and recovering from, you know, tendonitis and being sick and breaking my foot. So I wanted something that was really simple for me to dye and photograph so I can get into the shop fairly quickly, because I felt just stressed that I was missing the entire holiday shopping season because I was broken. So I had, I always break it into 100-gram increments, but what I end up doing is I try to do a few grams over, because as a buyer, I get miffed if it's a little bit short. And it's never happened to me where I bought something and I've gotten less than what I paid for. But I always double check. Just when I first started spinning, it would really upset me if I found out like it was just 100 grams or whatever I bought. Like I think it was 4 ounces, so it was like 113 grams. If it was just 113 grams, I would feel a little bit sad, thinking, oh darn, I could have gotten an extra couple of grams. Which, it's not really a big deal. I think most fiber artists tend to overcompensate anyway, because you have a natural product, and things like relative humidity can also impact the total weight. So I don't do that actually anymore, but it's a long-winded way of saying that I end up having less than 100 grams for the last braid that I dyed. So I debated whether or not I should just sell it at a discount, so you would just pay for how much there was. And then I thought, you know what? I haven't spun just combed top in forever. Like, I honestly can't remember the last time. It must have been probably at least 2 years ago. Yeah, I think it was at least 2 years ago that I spun combed top. So I thought, I'll hold on to this and maybe do a video on it. But I might actually do a live stream. That might be worth watching, because then I can talk a little bit more about how I approach spinning combed top, and as a dyer, the things that I do to make sure that combed top is spinnable. Because when I first started dyeing wool, I always tested everything that I dyed to make sure that all of the stages of the production process would be of a superior quality for the end user, right? So my first attempts, I accidentally felted bits of it, so like squeezing it too much during the wetting part and also the dyeing part. And so I learned, okay, well, you can't spin felt. Not like that anyway. Yeah, I can talk a little bit about what I do as a dyer to make sure that it remains spinnable. And also just what I typically do when I spin this way. Because I know that there are different ways to spin combed top out there. Yeah, maybe there will be a whole series of different approaches in the future. So, Jackie's asking the width of my loom. This is 32 inches, so that's 80 centimeters. How am I liking my new stand? Oh, I love it. Which sounds ridiculous. It's just a stand. The only thing that it's doing is keeping my loom off the floor. Yeah, I like it a lot, and I'm definitely looking forward to the time when I can drive with it somewhere. So there's a lot of portability in having the stand. So if I want to do demonstrations, that'll be an easy thing for me to do. Which leads me to the thing that I almost forgot to announce. I'm going to be doing a fiber show, Cotswolds Wool Weekend, at the end of April. So if you are in the UK and are looking for a festival to attend, I don't know how big it is going to be, but I will be a vendor there, and hopefully we'll be bringing my giant demonstration warp-weighted loom and a project, and I will be hopefully doing this in conjunction with the Carinian Museum, which is sort of like the Roman museum in the region of Cirencester, which is where I live. And yeah, I'm asking a fellow fiber lady who lives locally if she could help me out. So I could bring this, and use my stand and not have to put it on the table where I would be displaying my goods. So yeah, I'm very excited. This is the first fiber show that I've gone to since 2012. Yeah. So I did a few shows back in the day and then moved to Korea where it was a real struggle getting a hold of any wool. And then obviously with a PhD and limited means to travel, I've not really been able to go to any fiber shows in the UK. I went to, it was the Melton Mowbray Rare Breeds show in September last year? No, not last year, 2 years ago. So I went to that and that was a lot of fun. And I talked to a lot of shepherds who wanted to find out what they could do with their wool. And a lot of them were using British rare breeds. So they had sort of those wools that you probably read about online. They're like conservation breeds, or they have like some historical purpose. But you know, the shepherds are thinking like other ways to use their animals, because if you've got wool and you don't know what to do with it, and you don't really get anything for selling it, you just have to throw it away. But where do you throw it away to, right? It's all expensive to get it carted away, but the animals need to be shorn. So they were trying to think more broadly about how to deal with their wool products. So yeah, there might be some chances to talk to some shepherds, because I know there's a couple of local shepherds, one of which has ryelands, which is still my favorite go-to fiber if I want something soft and durable. Yeah, so because the Cotswolds is well known for Cotswold wool, I'm hoping there's going to be some rare breeds, conservation breeds, and shepherds around, so it would be fun to do some video as well as all the demonstrations. So because it's happening on a weekend, I might try to coerce my partner into helping me with stuff. So we'll see as we get nearer the time what I can do. I might look into live streaming again with my phone, hopefully without the blips that I was experiencing before. Another reason why I'm not doing them with my phone, I'm doing them with my main camera now. Hi Maureen, thank you for joining us. Yes, I'm very much looking forward to the opportunity to just be around other vendors. One of the things that I both love and find a bit stressful is being around people who are very, very capable, because I kind of forget that I'm also capable. But there's a lot of creativity when you are around people who are doing similar things as you. And I've kind of missed that about the whole process. So it's not like stealing somebody else's ideas, but just sort of seeing how other people within fiber arts display their goods, or the kinds of products that they offer, or the project ideas. Like sometimes I just want to do things for myself, but there's often a lot of camaraderie involved. So I think one of the things that can set fiber arts apart from other modes of selling is just the general enthusiasm. So when I've done fiber shows in the past, for example, I've been to some where I've been the only spindle spinner doing active demonstrations for free. And a lot of times people would come in without the budget for buying like a spinning wheel, but they wanted to get into this because like they'd been a knitter or a crocheter for years, but they wanted to kind of branch into sort of those peripheral activities like spinning, but they wanted something that felt accessible with their budget. And I remember numerous times there would be other fiber arts vendors at the same shows as me sending, you know, an interested person to the competition, right? Which, you know, it's kind of unheard of in a capitalistic society to take someone away from, you know, your shop, right? But I think that's one of the things that I miss the most is kind of sharing the education and the enthusiasm and getting people to the items that they want rather than trying to hard sell them something that they might not be really interested in. Because that's actually one of the things that I've always disliked. I don't want to be sold to. I want someone to understand what it is that I want or need and direct me to it, right? Here's my options, but also you might check out these options as well because that might be more suited to you. I love that and I miss it. Yeah, so there's that. Yeah, fiber arts people are good like that. Yeah, exactly. And kind of being so far removed from the whole scene makes me lament that I don't really know any other vendors, like not personally. I think Crafternoon Treats, which is another YouTuber who does a lot of fiber art stuff, but also I think she does card making and like watercolor stuff. She does a lot of different things like journals and diaries, which is just kind of fun to watch. But she's also a hand dyer, and I think she knits. But yeah, like I know she's in the UK. There's another one. I think Abercairn Yarns is also in the UK. But I don't really know them personally. And the best way to learn about people, right? These shop owners is actually to go and have a chat with them in person. So yeah, I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to have a chat with other fiber enthusiasts. Also getting out and being part of the community here, teaming up with the Carnegie Museum would be a great thing. Because I recently, just a couple weeks ago, I went and looked at one of their unusual loom weights that they've got on display. And I'll probably be posting that report I'm writing to my patrons first on Patreon. And then I'm going to submit it to a newsletter, which will probably become public in a year or so. But yeah, it would be nice to do more collaborative efforts because there's a big history of fiber arts in this area, and obviously in the ancient past, because that was Iron Age. That was the period that I studied for my PhD. So yeah, there'll be a lot of overlap, I hope. So I've just pinned on another bit of the length, and so we've probably got about 1, 2. Oh yeah, that can't be right. 75 inches. No, that's right. So I've got about 2.5, not quite 2.5 yards to go. And so I've probably done about 7 inches, which makes about sense. So I had only just started the second panel when the live stream happened, so that's pretty decent progress considering that I yammered for a while and been interrupted besides. So I'm gonna have to leave it there because it's dinner time. Tonight is the conclusion of our 6-year-long D&D campaign, and I'm very excited about it for a couple of reasons. One of the things I've been doing is I've been writing all these notes for the last 6 years, and I'm going to, in the interim, begin writing like a little short story about my players' campaign, their experiences, some of the highlights, the funny bits, the sad bits, all of it. Yeah, just like a distillation of the last 6 years. And it's a good time to quit too, because they started at level 1 and they're going to be level 14 out of 20, which is, you know, that's a long time to be playing these characters. And they've gone through all sorts of different experiences as well. And as people, I think they've also developed, you know, communication with each other in sort of like a narrative sense, you know, exploring things about them that, you know, like when you're put into a position where you get to explore feelings and sensations, have experiences that you yourself might not be able to have in real life, I don't know, I think it kind of tells you a lot about yourself. So it's been a fun 6 years, but I'm looking forward to it being done because it's a lot of work on my end as a dungeon master. And I was also happy to know there are a few fellow critters, who watch some of my video content and know about Critical Role. I'm really looking forward to doing some Critical Role content. So we're going to be doing a Wild Mount. So I've had the book for a couple years now, and we will be doing that coming up soon. So for those of you who are interested, I'll probably end up dropping some little details going forward in these little live streams. So because of that, I can't stay on for too long, so I'm going to wrap things up now and probably schedule another live stream either for next Saturday, or we'll see how things go for the week after. So I think that will be either the end of February or beginning of March. I don't have a calendar in front of me. There will be a Valentine's drop for my patrons, so you can check that out first. And got some new stuff in the shop and new stuff that I'm going to be putting in the shop coming up. I'm going to be doing more spinning videos, do another project update video for my New Year's resolution, so those of you who are kind of doing something similar can kind of see how I've been progressing. Sometimes just getting a little motivation from watching other people, or new ideas, or if you're a little bit late to the party, there's no better time to start than the present. So thank you very much for joining me today. I will see you very, very soon. Thank you all for supporting me in the various ways that you have, like watching my videos, subscribing, liking stuff, joining my Patreon, purchasing goods from my shop. All that really helps quite a lot. So anyway, have a great Sunday, guys. It's getting a little dark outside now. It's dinner time. My tummy's grumbling. So yeah, I will see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.